All right.
So yeah, we have Sam Eisenbeiser, hope I pronounced that right, economic development specialist. Sam has over 17 years of community and economic development experience, both as an analyst and a project manager. Prior to joining the town of Groton in 2016, his experience included both municipal level work and private consulting. And in addition to Sam, we also have Bruce Flax here, Executive Director this morning from Greater Mystic Chamber of Commerce. He joined the chamber after working in entertainment and marketing at Foxwoods for over 26 years. And as a 25-year resident of Groton, who served on the town council and as mayor, Bruce has a wealth of knowledge, and he looks forward to focusing on the chamber, on its members, and working to successfully open Mystic back up for business as COVID becomes manageable through vaccination and safe behavior. And I can say personally, I'm looking forward to that. I am very pleased to see a lot of businesses that survived out there and kind of the changes that they've had to, make. And so I'm happy to see kind of where it goes, and hopefully we can get back out there and have businesses thrive. So with that, yeah, I don't know which one of you guys would like to kick it off as far as the presentation goes, but we're looking forward to hearing it.
Tyler, if we can just acknowledge that Bonnie Nolt, our ECAR president, has joined the call. Morning, Bonnie, how are you?
Good, I'm driving.
Okay.
Hi,
I explained to Bruce that I didn't let Bonnie know until like just about 11 o'clock last night, since this is a commercial real estate forum, but so she'll be with us for about a half an hour. So Bruce, if you want to go ahead and start with, tell us what's going on in Mystic.
Okay, thanks, and hi Bonnie, hi everybody.
Hey Bruce.
Thanks for having me. As Tyler had said, I'm somewhat new to the chamber world, although not new to Groton and the Mystic area. So from a business perspective, I talk to Sam and the people in his office quite often because they're very helpful in terms of what's going on in economic development, and they're a great partner to and resource for us, and I'm sure for you guys and for incoming businesses that are considering coming into the area. We did have a good summer, and Mystic was very robust. There was a lot of activity going on. I think one of the reasons that this area has stayed so relevant is because we have like an outdoor component to the vibe down here, and we're equidistant between New York City and Boston, and so people were looking for short day trips to travel, and they took advantage of Mystic and how beautiful it is. From a business perspective, we have seen new business come into the area, and from that standpoint, we're optimistic that will continue. From a chamber business to business standpoint, our focus is trying to look past the tourist aspect of Mystic and try to open up and be relevant to businesses that are further out from the bridge in Groton and Stonington, and try to develop a business to business program where we're more of a I'm going to say like a chamber that's not tourist driven, and be able to help businesses in that respect. I know I said it before, but both Sam and the economic development, I think Susan Cullen on the Stonington side, with the town of Stonington, are great resources, like I said, for us. And we really encourage not only those folks when they know something's going on, but the realtors in the area to contact us should they have new businesses that are coming in or want references, or any way that we can help them. And as somebody who's new to the chamber world, we're still learning. We have a whole new staff here, and we've hit the ground running. So I guess that I kind of was interested to be on this call as much to introduce myself to you as you are as a resource for us. So I'm hoping that as we get traction and we establish ourselves as the chamber, and coming out of COVID, that you can reach out to us as much as we can reach out to you, and make sure that there's a good symmetry between us.
Absolutely. Sam, go ahead and introduce yourself as well, and then we can sort of have a roundtable discussion.
Sure. And would you like me to cover some of the overview now, Susie?
Yeah,
or-
yeah.
Okay, because I'm happy to give the overview and then we can dig a little deeper into it as you guys wish to. So thanks again. My name is Sam Eisenbeiser. I've been at the town for over 5 years now. But as you mentioned, my career has been pretty long in both planning and economic development. So what as Susie had asked, talk about an overview of what's happening in Groton, and what I want to cover briefly, just to give you guys a little bit of orientation, is the housing situation, and then a little bit about retail and the industries here. So you may recall back in 2016, we actually had a market study done, and we've been working off of that from a strategic standpoint for a while. One thing that study pointed out was how many commuters we have. As of 2018, of our 26,000 jobs in Groton, that's almost 22,000 people are driving in. And, that high number and proportion led us to believe that there was some latent housing demand. And not only did that set us off on our whole process of redeveloping our former, elementary schools and public properties that we need to dispose of, but it also led us to commission a housing study. And that actually, the results of that are going to be presented to the town council this month. The study itself is on the website, our town website, under planning and development. We had the same consulting firm come in, did the study for us. And what it really did was it actually corroborated what we believed, which was that there is a very strong housing demand. And primarily what they found is that what our market lacks right now is more higher end market rate apartments with modern amenities. It's been a long time since we had a substantial development built. If anything, the lack of development that we've seen in terms of housing in the last 10 years meant that the rest of the region sort of outpaced us. And so we lost, population when overall there have been successful housing developments around and outside of Groton. What they actually found is that in the next 10 years, they see over 5,000 housing units in terms of potential demand. About 1,000 of those units they expect to be met with pipeline projects that are existing in the pipeline in the region. But that still leaves about 4,000 units remaining of potential demand for housing units, primarily, and I'd say over half of that would be rental units at a market rate. But just to call out what they found, they broke it down, and this is in the housing study, but they broke it down into a number of categories of unmet demand that they see in the next 10 years. And that was what was most useful to us. It falls into the various categories of new EB workers, but then also new workers to the region based on other industries that are emerging. People who are currently living in obsolete units. And then you have rental upgraders who would take advantage of a higher price point product if it were available. And then you have existing commuters, and housing studies, the methodology is going to, and the assumptions are going to play heavily into the quantifiable results. But we feel strongly that it's showing that there's, that there are reasons to believe that there's unmet demand for housing in the area. So the next steps on that housing study, it's going to be presented to the town council in mid-October. And, like we said, we feel like now we can answer the question of where the pressure is. And it really plays into the redevelopment properties. And let me just give you a quick overview on that. We do have a website. It's grotonprojectupdates.com. And that is designed to give everybody the latest details on where these projects are. Most of you are aware, a very common practice, we've got elementary schools and other properties that had been, underutilized, some of them even abandoned. And they all went through a process of trying to find market solutions, really. So you may be familiar with some of these, but let me just start with Triton Square. And that's the former William Seeley School, which is at our interchange where we have the Stop and Shop Plaza. And it's actually up at the hill, kind of behind the Taco Bell Super 8 area. So a former elementary school, and that school's been demolished. We have received a site plan for 260 market rate apartments. And based on that, the way the site plan is looking, we expect groundbreaking to happen early next year. And the way I see this is that in many respects, it's going to be the first testing of the market that we've seen in a long time. So we have other projects, in the pipeline, but in this case, just like the absorption that we saw over at the Stonington units, and even through COVID, they were rented out really quickly. And same with our Pleasant Valley units up off of Route 12 near the subbase. They're at high occupancy as well. So we expect to see that this will help kind of bring encouragement to the area to say we have a market here for market rate units. Just to touch on the other ones that are earlier in the process, the former Colonel Ledyard Elementary School on West Street in Groton City. They did receive a zoning amendment that will allow them to proceed with renovating the building into about 14 units. And then there's a plan to build up to 60 units on the land behind it. And again, that proximity to EB and the five corners there, presents a interesting amenity and access for those folks. We've got some land on Gold Star Highway, and the town is working with a development team. The concept would be 300 units of multifamily at that location. We should have an update on that at the end of next month. A couple other ones that are either in a holding pattern or early on. Pleasant Valley School off of Route 12. We're going to be issuing a request for proposals to give folks to tell us what they would do with that property. We do expect it to be residential. And then Mystic Education Center, a lot of back and forth on that, but as it stands, the developer, Respler, still has a purchase and sales agreement with the state of Connecticut that's valid into 2022. And we do expect at some point that their concept will be brought before Groton Planning and Zoning Commission. That's where that stands right now. The other one I wanted to mention was Groton Heights School near Fort Griswold. We actually had our preferred developer is Thayer Mahan, the technical underwater robotics firm that's growing in our area. And their CFO appeared in front of the town council at the end of August, reaffirming that their intention is to turn this into their world headquarters, really. Their company started at 2 employees 5 years ago, and now they're pushing 100, and their growth rate is really strong. They continue to hire, so they do want to make this a little bit of a flagship for them. So that project continues. If it's okay, let me just touch on retail and another aspect of our industry, and then I'm happy to answer questions and dig deeper if we need to. To me, getting these units in Groton is going to shift how people feel about our retail market. Before 2020, we would attend conferences with the International Council of Shopping Centers, and a lot of, just trying to raise awareness about Groton. And I understand from a numerical standpoint, a lot of people feel like it's not as strong as some of the other more urban areas. But I think people were receptive, and it was really more about raising awareness about the opportunity here. But we've seen some examples about how retail could potentially succeed here. Notably, Chipotle, Jersey Mike's, and Popeye's Chicken. And we always laughed about that Tim Hortons property at Meriden and Route 1, and how we didn't know what circumstances were going to get that out there and reused. And so the Popeye's Chicken is doing a great business there. So we think those things proof out the market. And we actually, in the process, have reached out to a national retail recruiting company called Nava Retail. And they're actually actively recruiting on behalf of Groton. And we work with them to try to narrow in what retailers are on a growth trajectory would make sense for our area and for our market. So that's ongoing. And that's something that they can do that we just can't, because they have all the connections. But we have a really close, good relationship with them, and we're happy with how that's going. Just with regards to the pandemic, we're really pleased with how stable Groton has proved out to be in this. If you think about the Navy, the naval base, we have really, increasing tensions with foreign powers, and that's what leads the politicians to continue to appropriate money. And then that's hand in hand with Electric Boat. They never slowed down their manufacturing of their existing Virginia class through 2020. It always stayed on track, which is great. And then you've got the construction of their new boat shed, which I don't know if you've seen it. It's gigantic. The steel structures are up now, but that puts them on track to be able to take advantage of the Columbia class contracts, which they've signed the initial for the initial two boat delivery on the Columbia class. So that's what leads to all those numbers with regards to their hiring. And then finally, Pfizer, their role has really strengthened and reinforced through this entire process. But I also just want to talk about blue tech specifically and Thayer Mahan, because that's an emerging industry that's really advantageous for our area. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Thayer Mahan. So both of the founders are former Navy. And in fact, their CEO, Mike Connors, he was, right before retiring from the Navy, he was the Atlantic Area Commander. So, retired as an admiral. But they see a role for these autonomous afloat or underwater vehicles to be deployed globally to collect data about foreign submarine and maritime movements. And so it's the size of a surfboard, and it actually gets deployed, and from 3,000 miles away, they can collect data, they can maneuver it. So not only do they have contracts with the defense industry, but also with energy companies and geological companies and oceanographical companies. So what it really represents for Groton and for the whole region is diversifying into something that's not as subject to the sway of defense contracting. As glad as we are about EB being very stable, we all know that in the past that that can change. So it's an emerging industry that's really advantageous for our area because it's high tech, but it takes advantage of our inherent assets. And we're actively working to build an ecosystem, build on the ecosystem that already exists. And in fact, there's talk about, there's projects that are trying to pursue an incubator type organization at UConn Avery Point that would help build more businesses in this industry. So we have a website, it's bluetechgroton.com. That's bluetech, Groton.com. And what that does is it compiles all the data that prospective businesses would want to know about why that industry is strong for our area and why they would want to be here. The last thing I want to touch briefly on is the relief funds, only to say that you may have heard about how every town has been receiving, a block of money. Groton is slated to receive $8 million. We've got half of that has been received already. Many towns have already announced their spending priorities, but Groton is taking a very deliberate process. We have a long-term recovery committee, and we have town staff that's going to do an actual needs assessment that's going to reach out to the public and try to find out how we can view this money as not only relief, but an investment for the future, and maybe leverage it to help out the community as a whole. But even I think there'll be some business assistance grants in there as well. So we're open to ideas, and we expect that there'll be more opportunities for public outreach, whether it's in person, Zoom calls, or even just digital input digitally, as we move forward. So that's the overview, and I'm happy to give any details or answer questions. Thanks, Susie.
Thank you very much.
I
Question?
just want to say, Sam, thank you so much for the update. I used to get them all the time when I was on council with Bruce.
Sure, you bet,
And
Bonnie.
the work that the economic development's doing is unbelievable. When Bruce and I took office, so it was that 5 years ago, there were empty storefronts in Mystic. The economic development that's happened in such a short time is all because of the effort of the economic development in Groton. And that's what it takes. It just doesn't happen. It's hard work, vision, and I applaud you guys tremendously, because there's lots of good things happening.
Thanks, Bonnie. I would just say that, we have to have a long-term strategy if we want to take advantage of favorable trends. So after the streetscape got done in downtown Mystic, and then to Bruce's point, Mystic is so on trend for what really met everybody's needs over the past 18 months. But for us to have this long-term vision, that's what's necessary to take advantage. When a trend works in your direction, we've got to leverage that, because sometimes they work against us. And so that's the plan. Thanks, Bonnie.
So Sam, I have a question for you. In the housing study that you were talking about, being that we are a realtor association and selling homes is our number one focus, or one of them, commercial as well. You mentioned 4,000 rental units primarily is what's needed. So I just want to point out that the average renter's personal wealth is $8,000 compared to a homeowner's personal wealth of $197,000, given the equity. That's at this point in time with the housing market the way it's been for the last couple of years. So I just want to point that out. So you're giving us the reasons that EB is probably a lot of transient work, maybe contract work. But other than that, why didn't that housing study point to more single family homes, multifamily homes, something that people can build personal wealth with?
I encourage you all to take a look at it, and I'm not sure that it answers that question from that angle, only because if they're looking at current trends of what's in demand and what's lacking in our area, and combining those together to result in, call it two-thirds of the demand will be rental versus maybe a third of it would be for single family homes. I think that they're coming at it feeling like the trends are based on the type of workers we can expect in the future, as well as demographics, older population, as well as folks who, are new to the workforce. So I think that, a closer read of the housing market would support that that's the reason why. But of course, looking at their method, you'll see that they just kind of come at it from a very numerical standpoint, and they've got to just draw assumptions. So I don't disagree with you with regards to, the benefit of single family homes. I think that they might say that our market has a pretty good spectrum of single family homes, sizes, ages, vintage and price points right now. And what really is lacking, and that would be the kind of the pressure test on this, is really new, high end, small but well appointed, kind of modern feel units. So I think that from our standpoint, based on their findings, we view this as not shifting what our housing market is offering, but just kind of rounding it out with something that's missing.
Very good. And one more question.
Sure.
It seems like a lot of schools are turning into housing. Where are your children going?
Well, absolutely. I'm happy to report we built a brand new middle school, and that's consolidated. In doing so, what happened is that now two of our other two middle schools became brand new elementary schools. So in doing so, they were able to figure out exactly what the needs were, but 3 brand new schools in town,
Okay.
with the top end facilities and the types of designs that we're looking for. So from a numerical standpoint, we're meeting that need and have some flexibility as well.
Thank you.
I can just add on to what one thing that Sam was saying. One thing I found out as from the chamber side of things, from Department of Transportation, is that on average 10,900 people go over the bridge a day, and that was from 2017. So if anything, the numbers more recently are probably more, but it's a big selling point for business and for people who have commercial entities close to town or around here. That there's a lot of traffic going through town right now, and the majority of them are here to stop in Mystic and enjoy the site. So it's definitely been bustling, continues to be.
Speaking of traffic, Bruce and Sam, that is the congestion in Mystic is you can't not talk about that. Are there any plans to fix that? What can you do? Parking, traffic?
Happy to chime in on that, Bruce.
Yeah, go ahead, Sam.
And add as you feel. So we did complete a parking study that you may have heard of, and I was working closely with Bruce as well as Stonington. So it may make sense to you if you aren't already specifically aware, but you understand that a lot of congestion comes from people who are looking for parking spaces. So a lot of this is, we look at parking as a very comprehensive problem that needs a comprehensive solution. We never say that, oh yeah, well, we're just going to build a garage and that's going to be the answer. We in no way want to adversely impact the character of Mystic, because that's the brand, that's the asset. But I think along a spectrum of different tactics, we've got some low hanging fruit, the kind of one, Bruce, feel free to round this out, but if you think about employees, so employees, they need to be consolidated in a little bit of a longer walk. And we're, looking at places like church parking lots or another Stonington town parking lot, trying to make sure that the employees don't take the prime spots. That goes hand in hand with just the slightest enforcement mechanism, because there's almost no enforcement historically. So, and then also finding ways to just, find spaces through more efficiencies. So I'm really happy with how what the outcome of this study showed, that there's a lot of small things that we can do that I think will add up to taking the edge off the problem. Any thoughts on that, Bruce?
No, I agree. It's the both towns. In fact, I think that Stonington and Groton were talking about next steps, and taking the parking study. It's one thing to have the parking study done, but then to take action on it. And one of the actions that's being being bandied about is paid parking downtown and holding people accountable to the 2 hours. And it's an important component in order for there to be success in trying to create that parking program downtown. So the towns, the one odd thing about Mystic is that we're not a town. We're two municipalities, a piece of each municipality. And so if something's going to be done down here, they have to work together to do that. And I think that, and Tim, I don't know if you were on those calls, but I think there was a call yesterday. And so I think there's going to be more talk about it soon to try to figure out the next steps.
Gee, that seems like a good idea to me. Being fairly new to this area, I moved to Quaker Hill in May. And I've had the great fortune of going to Watch Hill a couple of times, only to find out that parking was $50 a day. And so I chose to do the 2-hour free parking, which either pay for parking or make people move every 2 hours. And except you still have congestion for people looking for parking. But that might be a good solution to have people pay for parking.
But I think the people in Watch Hill, they don't want anybody there.
Well, exactly.
They've set it up that they don't want. They're happy with just their group of people, and that's certainly not the way that it is in Mystic. So, one of the interesting things from the art festival that we did was we moved the art festival into the shipyard of the seaport, and one of the great results of that was that probably 500 plus cars parked in the seaport parking lot and kept that traffic out of downtown Mystic. So on a day when we had tens of thousands of people in Mystic, you could actually drive a car through town without much problem, easier than it was on a regular weekend or in the summertime. So there's something to be said for, I think, the seaport's looking at some of that stuff, and the consultants that were used for the parking study have a lot of experience in that. So I think if the towns can agree and figure out a path forward, it'll be a good one. But as you guys know, one of the big things to jump over is the people, the locals. The selling point of charging for downtown and having those actual, if you have like a charge machine or something in some capacity, it's going to be a tough pill to swallow for some of them.
And I'll just say with that, Bruce, is that, having an app and have it digitally managed, I'd say that's still on the table. It makes a lot of sense with less cost to infrastructure, but also it allows you to have variable pricing. So the prices might go up during peak hours in the summer. It might come back down because it's really just about management. It's not about the revenue. That would give us maximum flexibility and be able to just be responsive and just say, if the locals feel like you're charging me too much for a January Tuesday afternoon, it can be adjusted.
Am I making this up, or did I read about water taxis being a thing, like parking up the river and having a taxi?
It's been talked
bring you
about.
in?
Yeah, we talked about it, but looking at some kind of visitor center closer to exit 90 that had a water component to it. I think it's all being looked at, but it's that infrastructure, and Sam knows, could probably talk to it better, but it's, you need to get state money. I think you need to have some considerable backing to do that.
Yeah, it's the kind of thing where I love the creative idea of it, and I think it's worth moving forward. And sure, it's an unknown, but if something like that happened, it would actually, I work with the folks on the Thames River water taxi. They're having good success with that. So it would actually enhance the whole experience as well as take a little pressure off of Route 27.
Yeah. Questions, guys, gals? How about that big development that was supposed to happen, that the town people decided they didn't want the extra traffic, the mixed use, the boutique hotel, the condos and so forth?
Yeah, absolutely, Susie. So that's the Mystic Education Center. And as I mentioned, it's in a holding pattern. So the developers, it's called Respler. Jeff Respler is the developer, and they refer to it as Mystic River Bluffs. What's unique about that property is that it's actually state owned. So the process of trying to get some public support for this and go through the permitting process and define the right, the right scale. It's, we really haven't gone down that road yet because, the developers need to get in front of our planning and zoning commission to talk about zoning and talk about a concept. Nevertheless, and there has been some there have been concerns about what kind of traffic that would lead to, but I feel like, we've seen concept maps, but haven't seen an application. And keeping in mind, of course, not only is the state already planning to put signals at the intersection of Allen Street, that those ramps there, just because they know that they're needed, because this is just north of Allen Street on Cow Hill Road. But also, any proposed project in Groton would be held to the same standards of impact on traffic, making sure you mitigate those any kind of issues that it's going to, that it's potentially going to create. The concept itself is very interesting. It does include hotels, co-working space, commercial retail, as well as a spectrum of housing types. The fact that it's proposes a mixed use, I think not only is very responsive to the current market and the interest in that, but it also necessarily cuts back on the type of traffic that you'd have, because there are going to be some, errands and needs that are going to be handled internally. So I think it's the best, it has a lot of advantages, but we're really early in the process, and it's the state, the owners or the developers have the PSA with the state itself right now, and that's valid into next year. So it's going to keep unfolding.
Great. I would like to comment that I remember you came when I first got hired by the association. You came to talk to us. Norm Bryan brought you here, and I was so impressed that I don't know if it was you, maybe it was you that created a tax incentive for energy efficiency, in particular cars. I was so impressed by that. Is that still a thing in Groton?
Yeah, I think so. And that may have come out from a different department right before I came in, but yeah, and Groton Utilities was supporting of that. Of course, we have we're getting a pretty robust system of charging stations. The brand new middle school, which is next to the high school and Grosso Tech, that actually has a whole suite of charging stations. It's the most I've ever seen, aside from Chili's. So yeah, definitely still a theme here in town.
Yeah, forward thinking. What else, guys? I never said good morning to Heather. Thank you for joining us today. Any questions for our two guests?
I have a question, Susie.
Yeah.
Going back to Admiral Connor's project in Groton, where would that be located, and what approvals does he have, or what does he need to do to bring his entity to Groton?
So right now they have space in our airport business park, Leonard Drive, just up from our Groton New London Airport. They are quickly outgrowing that space. What they want to do in the Groton Heights Elementary School, which is right next to Bill Memorial Library, Groton Monument, that would probably be primarily office space, although I believe the zoning is in place where they could do some light industrial, really kind of R&D support. Everything that they do, it's not heavy industrial, it's really just assembly. The other thing that they have right now in the airport business park location is their operations center. On bluetechgroton.com, we have some pictures of it. It's really impressive. It's an entire suite of screens that helps them understand where all their units are deployed around the world and the type of data that they're collecting from them. So we see it as just really the sweet spot of, a physical product, a digital product, advanced technology, but they've also investigated trying to get some more waterfront space. I mean, they can work with Project Oceanography at every point to do some test deployment of some of their prototype units.
Mhm.
But if they could get some waterfront space, I think that they'd find that advantageous as well.
I like the sound of that because it's bringing some new tech to our area, which we haven't had in quite a long time. In the old days, and I say old days when Trident was in its heyday, we had tons of contractors who had offices in Groton. That's all changed now because most of the engineering group work at home. They don't need 1,000 square feet, 2,000 square feet. I worked for Traycor for many years. We had 2 buildings in Groton by the Submarine Memorial. That's all gone. The old Vitro building, which is still empty. We haven't had high-tech people come back into this area. And the point is, it's all changed. So everything is different, but bringing somebody new, somebody that is into high-tech, something that certainly is for defense purposes, and also bring in that kind of high-tech to the Groton area, New London County, that kind of thing, I think it could stimulate other thought. As far as retail space is concerned, we're still at a loss for getting people into. We have too many spaces that are open. Mystic is doing better downtown Mystic. My office is in Mystic on the Stonington side. I see a few, but in Groton, we have too many spaces that are still open. And the rates have gone down. The landlords have lowered the dollar per square foot, but we still have few spaces that are empty. Even 1,200 square foot spaces are very, very difficult to lease. We're not talking $20 a square foot anymore. We're not talking $10 a square foot. We're talking less. And the point is, we need to stimulate the thought that we do need retail space, and not everything is going to be Amazon. I mean, you've got a large job to do there. We certainly understand that. But those of us in the commercial world understand that we have some difficulties that are very, very challenging. I hate that word challenging because it means I know we have a problem. I'm not sure I know how to fix it.
Absolutely. And we appreciate what you guys do. I mean, from our perspective, we see it as this triangulation, trying to get the housing in so we can get the workforce, and then the workforce supports the industry. And then, the industry supports the jobs, and then those jobs support locals who are going to support the retail. One thing I'll tell you right now is that airport business park, that's effectively at capacity right now. I think I saw, a couple 3,000 square foot units available, but we get calls from folks who are looking for 5,000-10,000, square feet. Some of that comes from the biotech industry, life sciences. It's difficult because there's no pattern to it. They just call and they need 50,000 square feet and they need it right now, and then they're gone. But we always feel like that airport business park, it met a need, and now that need continues, even though it's all filled out. So another investment like that, I think, would be interesting. Other than that, people are left to look for flexible space kind of here and there.
What activity have you seen on the Waterford Airport? We hear all kinds of stories where things are happening and things don't happen. People are interested. Pricing on that is $8 million. Certainly a good piece of land, but so far over the last, 10, 15 years, it's sat there. Is there any activity, any interest in developing the Waterford Airport? Because it's a good piece of land.
Yeah, I've heard the stories about that. To me, what works is, and I don't know if Heather has some insight on this too, like if you look at the Mystic Business Park, what Tim Tylask has done over there, and you make that upfront investment, and then you make spaces of variable sizes available. Airport Business Park, somebody's got to make that upfront that leap into that development, and then figure on it being used over time. We don't have that many more industrial spaces in town. We're in talks with data centers. I think that's been in the news. Life sciences, you just never know what's possible. Medical instruments, that sort of thing. But a big piece is always it's a big project. So I can understand not, finding a buyer for that's not easy.
Thank you.
Sure.
Bruce, you mentioned that you're growing, business is growing despite the pandemic. Are there no concerns coming up with the eviction moratoriums, foreclosure moratoriums, all that stuff with having any more empty storefronts or open space, not open space, but any other commercial business like dropping?
Yeah, I mean, Sam might have more into it. I don't see any. I think that, like, you know, the Dunkin' Donuts in Stonington by the car rental place stayed vacant for maybe 4 months, if that. Businesses are seeming the open space that's out there that's vacated is taken. It seems pretty quickly. And the guy who's doing that Dunkin' Donut space is a pizzeria from Brooklyn, New York, who's under the Brooklyn Bridge, and he had a run of stores in Connecticut before, a chain, and he's already moved up here to Stonington, and he's going to open up a pizzeria. He's hoping by December. So to your question, I think that the space that gets vacated gets taken pretty quickly. I do think that, like, in terms of the resident building, the new building on the other side, there are some issues. You know, I think Abbott's Lobster is having a tough time finding people to go behind to eat. You know, the marketing and how you get people to go up those stairs and around the back is challenging. But the space right now seems to be taken, and people are expanding when they can.
Okay.
I'll just say that my understanding that there's state funds available as needed for folks who do need to backfill, or they need to address issues related to evictions and foreclosure. So you know, we have a robust human services here in Groton. So we think that those needs are going to be met. But with regards to retail, and I think to Norm's point, it's a little bit feast or famine. You know, you've got some place like Mystic, you know, where it's an easy sell and folks want to be there. And then there's other places that are, you know, not robust.
Well, thank you guys both. This was very informational. Thank you for coming on today. It was a pleasure to have you, pleasure to talk with you. And I will stop the recording now.